Well, so came across an article from just a few days ago on the Telegraph, and then I came across another one which was from today, in fact, 8th of February, and sort of ties back into a common theme on this channel, which is my concern over mass migration. But I also it sort of ties indirectly into the video that I posted. I think it was last Friday, not the Friday just past, but the penultimate one, where I made reference to like Telegram LARPing, etc. And the reason that that I made that video was it was more to sort of speak. It was like echo chambers, like outside of like Telegram and whatnot. Most people do not give a shit, and that's a frightening reality that you have to face. The average man and woman that you see doing their daily business, going to work, commuting to work, back and forth, going to the shops, whatever they're fucking doing, like most people do not seem to be remotely concerned or they're oblivious to what's going on. And in this particular instance, this is just yet more like, I mean, it couldn't be any more in your face. So this article here, first and foremost, Britain is relying on foreign mothers to keep up fertility rates. Births are nearly a third higher among foreign-born mothers than those born in the UK. Right, this is from the 29th of January, this one. Britain is relying on foreign-born mothers to push up fertility rates, data has shown. The fertility rate for foreign-born mothers has increased in the past 2 years to 2.03 children per woman. This puts it close to the so-called replacement rate of at least 2.1 children per mother, which the UK needs to sustain its population, which any nation would need to sustain its population. Then it says, however, the foreign-born fertility rate is nearly a third higher than that of UK-born mothers, whose rate has fallen to just 1.54, which is well below the level needed for foreign, or for Freudian slip if ever there was one, which is well below the level needed for population growth and puts it on track for long-term decline. But even when it makes reference to, where is it? There, UK-born mothers. That's not taking into consideration like immigrants or their descendants, etc. It could be the descendant of an immigrant who's born in the country. Like the data doesn't really dig deep in terms of like the indigenous population of the country. But regardless of that fact, like this should be a concern for people. Which brings me on to this. Sure, this is from today. The coming 10 million, how unprecedented immigration will reshape Britain. The UK population is set to balloon to 72.5 million by 2032. But will this spell demographic catastrophe or economic boom? Fuck it, economic boom. Even if it did in any capacity lead to some sort of economic boom, we ain't feeling the benefit of that. This is where the reality of the matter is when it comes to these conversations, that irrespective of how much of a net contribution they create, irrespective of how much of a economic boom people create, they're not us, and it's nothing to do with color, religion, or creeds. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. I know some people may see it somewhat different in terms of provided that you're white, you can come to the UK. I'm a bit more on the ethnicity scale, so to speak. But regardless, 10 million more projected. So, Jose and his family are in the vanguard of an unprecedented surge of immigration to the UK, the scale of which was hammered home last week by new ONS population statistics. The figures suggest that the British population has overtaken that of France for the first time. On current trends, it will grow to 72.5 million by 2032, which is an increase of 7.3% from the decade previous, or just under 5 million, and beyond to 76.6 million as we near the middle of the century. All right. As Britain's birth rate is below replacement levels. And even this word, well, we need immigrants to come to the UK or Scotland because we're not having enough children. I mean, we're below replacement levels, so we need to import people in order to make up the shortfall. But yet, to call it replacement migration is a conspiracy theory. Isn't that funny? Anyway, so sorry. As Britain's birth rate is below replacement levels, and with 4.9, nearly 5 million people forecast to emigrate in the coming years, the net population growth will be entirely driven by the arrival on British shores of nearly 10 million migrants, 5 million of whom have already arrived. Whereas the previous wave of mass migration to the UK was mainly European, after 10 new countries joined the EU in 2004, the coming millions will be mostly Indians, Pakistanis, Nigerians, and Chinese nationals arriving on student visas, work study visas, social care visas, and under the new points-based immigration system. And how will they reshape Britain, they ask? Is that rhetorical? I don't know. Do the next 7 years spell demographic catastrophe or economic boom? The sense of change is already palpable, the most obvious sign being the dramatic rise of Reform UK, a party advocating a freeze on net migration to lead the polls. By 2050, get this right, by 2050, 1 in 3 of the UK population will have been born abroad, says Carl Williams, Research Director of the Centre for Policy Studies. Regardless of where these people come from, that's a huge amount of churn and something that is completely unprecedented. That's where a lot of the worries around immigration come from. It's a sense of disorientation that things are changing around you, or that things are changing around you really quickly. On the latest projection, by 2032, 14% of the whole of the UK's population will be people who have arrived in the 10 years leading up to it. Practically, all of them from India, Nigeria, Pakistan, and China. They are moving mostly to the big urban centres, especially London, Leicester, Reading, Oxford, and Cambridge, with Indians making up the highest number of immigrants. As you can see here, courtesy of the Home Office data, India, China, Pakistan, Nigeria. Doesn't fucking matter. It's like, this is my thing. It doesn't really matter where they come from. They're not us. The borders are just open. They're open. They've been open for decades at this point. And our population has exponentially increased as a consequence of as such. And as I said at the beginning of this video, the vast majority of people just walk about, they don't give a fuck. As if this is normal. People will begin to notice the change. I mean, there's parts of the UK that are undeniably different to how they were 50, 60 years ago. You know, London in particular, Birmingham. It's spot the white man down there. But you're starting to see the same implications occurring in Scotland. They're starting to manifest. You know? I've been to Glasgow, I've been to Paisley many times, especially over the last few years. And I can assure you, I felt outnumbered. Because I live up in the Highlands, obviously. It's not so bad up here for now. But it's unnerving. You know, when I was down there was a few occasions where I was with my ex-partner and we'd be on a bus and we were the only 2 white people on the bus, or the only 2 Scottish people on the bus, to be more specific. Everybody else was Pakistani or somewhere down not part of the world, and or African. You know? We'd go into like Aldi or a Lidl's or whatever, and a good portion of the people in the shop were BAME, for lack of a better term. Does that make me racist for noticing that? You try to explain this to people who walk about with metaphorically with their head in the sand, and they think you're racist. And that's what I find really fucking frustrating, to be honest, because this is a concern. And then you get the most outrageous argument that I've heard from some people. Like, oh, well, you know, by the time we're a minority, we'll be dead anyway, so what's the fucking matter? It's called empathy, mate. You know? It's called empathy. I'm thinking of my hypothetical grandkids, and even if I don't have any grandkids, you know, in the years to come, that's not the point. You know. Anyway, the anticipated influx will mean 5 million more people will be needing somewhere to live, impacting transport, healthcare, education, and every kind of public service at a time where national infrastructure is already straining. More than 6 million people sit on NHS waiting lists, exacerbated undeniably so from the CUF, but not limited to, because undeniably mass immigration is clearly playing a fucking role in that as well. But we can't talk about that because you're classified as a racist. A&E departments are buckling under record-breaking delays. There are shortages of teachers and overcrowded classrooms. 3/4 of the population believe public services have deteriorated in the past 5 years. There is a backlog of more than 4 million houses. You know, how come like in Scotland they continuously talk about a fucking housing crisis? How many councils in Scotland have declared housing emergencies / crises? You know, that's clearly immigration. If our population is organically declining, how can there be housing shortages? But to point out the obvious, oh, you're racist, man. You probably goose stepped in Tesco's. Yes, I'll do it. Meanwhile, 11 million people, a quarter of Britain's working age population, do not have a job, and 3.2 million are on sickness and disability benefits, million more than before the pandemic, alleged. Faced with these numbers, so-called conservative governments promised to get to grips with migration levels, and they were full of shit because they did fuck all. Don't know. So, yeah, anyway. The ONS is quick to caveat that their forecast is a projection based on past data. It could be brought down by policy or other factors, although it could also be bumped up by unexpected events, such as Hong Kong or Ukraine being recent examples. But who is to say there won't be another urgent refugee crisis originating somewhere else? Yeah. Okay. Such as the bogus refugee crisis that began the shit back in 2015 now, 2016, 2015. Based on available data, 10 million new arrivals by 2032 will be mostly students and low-earning unskilled workers destined for the social and care sectors. It's just never ending, isn't it? Lowest ever recorded. What's this? It means that so the national fertility rate is now 1.6, which is the joint lowest since records began 2 decades ago, and on par with most European nations, where fertility rates have fallen to 1.4. Among the lowest globally are China, Japan, and Canada, because it is a somewhat worldwide phenomenon, apart from like in Africa and India and whatnot, where populations are projected to decline below replacement levels and whatnot. But that doesn't mean we should be opening our borders, because time and time again, I point out on this channel, I've been very consistent and I will remain consistent. And I don't give a fuck if somebody calls me racist, IRL, or whatever the case may be. Like, the solution to a declining birth rate, the solution to a declining population overall, is not to open your borders. The only reason that anybody would ever advocate for such a fucking policy is one of two things, or maybe three things: ill will / idiotic, or they're so obsessed with GDP and economies and whatnot, or they're malevolent. Nobody is taking any consideration for what it means for us as a people, and that's been my biggest bugbear for the longest time. Like, if anything was to ever come out of this channel, it would be for like people to just adopt my fucking talking points, or at the very bare minimum take them into consideration. What does it mean long term for us as a people? You know, it's democide or ethnocide. You know, it is metaphorically speaking suicide. Data from the Office for National Statistics also mirrors its projections in the UK's population, which showed it would remain static without immigration. Who cares? Good. Net migration of 4.9 million will account for the entire rise in the UK population to 72.5 million in 2032. The ONS projected that between 2022 and 2032, nearly 10 million people will move to the UK long term, while Nearly 5 million are anticipated to immigrate. 2023, 1 in 3 babies were born to a foreign-born mother, up from a quarter in 2008, and 1 in 4 were born to parents who were both foreign-born. In more than 1 in 10 local authorities, 33 out of 317, greater than 50% of live births were to foreign-born mothers, rising to 76% in the London borough of Brent and 75% in Newham in East London. Between 2022 and 2023, the number of babies born to foreign-born mothers increased by 2.6%. This was driven by mothers from West Africa, India, and Bangladesh. Why is this not concern for people is the question. And it's rhetorical because, quite frankly, we can't answer that. People are too occupied with their own lives, which you could maybe be envious of to a certain extent because they don't see the impending fucking cataclysmic events demography-wise coming in, maybe not necessarily their young lives, but most certainly their children's lives if they even have any kids, etc. And that's what concerns me. You know? That is a major concern. But for some reason, it continues anyway. Unabated.
Show me your hands, the bitten down nails, the cuts on your knuckles when you fight but you fail. Give me the roadmap to your personal hell. All 7 circles, I know them as well.